welcome to the BullCast podcast. I'm Katie Pickler, and with me today is Court Winsett and Karen Spann.
I'm right there with Court. I don't know what time of day it is, so good morning and good afternoon.
So today we are going to talk about the Fed chair. Not the chair, like a physical chair that you would sit in. The position.
Well, we did talk about a bell last week.
Yeah.
So
we could just continue the, now we're moving to
We're
furniture.
just doing furniture, yes.
I mean, you wonder, like, it's got to be a grand chair that the Fed chair sits in.
That's when you know BullCast is in its final stages, when we start doing inanimate objects.
Furniture and all
Yes.
that. We have definitely talked about the Fed chair. It is mentioned who he or she could potentially be, what their power is, what their role is, how they are very involved in the overall economy, the market, everything. So this isn't new information, but we're just going to specifically dive into the Fed chair. One person speaks and trillions of dollars in markets can move within minutes. And I know I've talked about that before on this podcast, how you can sit there and just watch. You've got news press conference pulled up, Fed chair's talking, and you look at the market and you're like, oh, okay, we like it. Oh, we don't like it. Oh, here we go. Here's a roller coaster. Could be a lot of fun for the thrill seekers, not necessarily when you're thinking about your money. But what and who and where, who exactly is the Fed chair? What do they actually do? Why does everyone from Wall Street to Washington to Main Street pay attention? Today, we're breaking down one of the most influential jobs in the world. But first, the list. The famous faces on U.S. currency. I really feel like this would definitely be one of those like Jay Leno stopping people on the streets and asking who's on these bills, because I bet a lot of people would get it wrong.
Yeah, probably. I think we kind of take for granted who's on our currency.
We don't think about it. I mean, when you go other places, you look at their currency and it's like, who's on their bills? Who's on that? Okay, we'll start this round robin. George Washington. On the dollar bill. His likeness has appeared on the $1 bill since 1869.
Who was before that, I wonder?
I can't speak with a lot of authority on the development of our currency, but suffice it to say that there is a history just behind the development of our currency and the different iterations that it's gone through over the years that would be probably fun to talk about, just not necessarily
Next
right now.
episode.
Next up, people are frequently surprised when they hear that Thomas Jefferson is on a monetary bill, a paper bill. Everybody knows that he's on the nickel, but he also is on one of our pieces of paper money. It's the $2 bill, which you don't see a whole lot out in circulation,
exists,
but it does exist. Yeah. $2 bill is still printed today, but many people mistakenly believe it's no longer in circulation. It is. They're just, again, they're not common to come by. The back of the $2 bill actually features John Trumbull's famous painting of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So you got Jefferson on the front, and of course he wrote the Declaration of Independence, and that's the signing of the Declaration of Independence is on the back of the $2 bill. The other day, our boss David Pickler commented that he believes that the back of the $2 bill, I can't remember if he described it as the prettiest, but certainly his favorite picture is the picture of the signing that it's on the back of the $2 bill.
It is a really pretty piece of currency. My kids each have a $2 bill, and I view them more as keepsakes or little gifts you give kids. I know you can use them, but it's fun to keep them.
Somebody that Court and I both know, and that's what this person specifically goes to the banks, get $2 bills, and he uses that as gifts. It's like gifts for kids' birthdays, things like that. And it is really cool, but it is a novelty that I think the first time when I was a kid and I saw a $2 bill, I thought it was fake.
Before I go on to the next one, back to who was on the $1 bill before George Washington.
Okay.
So before 1862, it featured Salmon P. Chase. And you're probably wondering, who is that? Because I've never heard of this guy. He was the Secretary of the Treasury under President Abraham Lincoln. So this currency change happened during the Civil War. Number 3 on our list would be the $5 bill featuring
Alexander Hamilton.
No,
Not
the
quite.
$5 bill.
Sorry, I was jumping because I was getting excited.
I know. So $5 bill is Abraham Lincoln. His portrait has been on the $5 bill since 1914. The Lincoln Memorial on the back of the bill contains a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the monument.
Do y'all remember, I don't think they do it as much anymore, but when we were kids, not kids, I think it was even later years, but like people would try and fold bills in certain ways to like show different things. And there's always been like, what is hidden in it. And then when the $20, I'm already jumping all over the place with these bills, but holding a certain light or what you could see. history. And my brother's taught me a ton about the bills and the numbers on it in circulation because he works for the Federal Reserve. And that's a whole fascinating. So I really do think we need to do an episode specifically about our currency and how we have to destroy it. And, if you rip it or you wash it in the washing machine. But I'm going to go ahead and let you take the one that I started to say because I honestly was not paying attention to Cam and just jumped straight to the $10 bill. So tell us about the 10.
So the $10 bill features a guy by the name of Alexander Hamilton. He is considered the creator of our modern financial system. He was put on the $10 bill in 1929. For those of you who don't know, Hamilton was born in the Caribbean, making him the only person currently featured on a commonly circulated U.S. paper currency who was not born in one of the original American colonies of the United States. He was an immigrant, as he says famously in the play Hamilton, immigrants get the job done. He is featured prominently in a show that was written by Lin-Manuel Miranda.
$10 founding father without a father got a lot farther. Smarter. That's why I know that bill so well, because of that song.
I think a lot of people know a lot more about Hamilton and about that period of time in our history because of the Broadway show, which is great.
Next on the list is a $20 bill. And who is featured on this $20 bill? None other than the 7th U.S. President, Andrew Jackson. What do you think is on the back of the 20? Do you remember? It is a building. What building would it be?
The Treasury?
No, possibly the most famous building or house in the United States.
The White House.
The White House.
Okay.
And while Jackson is on the current $20 bill, the Treasury Department has been working on a redesigned bill that will feature the abolitionist Harriet Tubman on the front.
Interesting.
We're going to have to do an episode on currency. This is just supposed to be our list.
I would say let's just quickly breeze through 50 and 100 and let's get into the Fed share. There's a lot of really cool facts in here that we need to talk about. But just to give you a little teaser, the $50 bill is the least printed U.S. denomination. It's got Ulysses S. Grant. He's been on it since 1914, but it was not always him. It has featured Hamilton, Franklin, Washington, and it has a jinx factor to it and has some bad luck around it. But I'm not going to tell you about it because we're going to talk about it on the next episode. And then the last one that we're going to touch on is the $100 bill. That is Franklin. He was officially put on the bill in 1914, same as Grant. Then when the first 100 Federal Reserve note was issued, he replaced Abraham Lincoln, who had been on the denomination since 1869. The modern $100 bill contains advanced anti-counterfeiting features, including a blue 3D security ribbon and a color-shifting bell in the inkwell. That is why I want to do a whole episode about dollars, because we talk about the advancement, the paper. So let's just put a pin in it. Tell Nicole, get us going. Let's talk about the Fed share.
Okay, history of the Fed. We've been doing a lot of history lately, so hearkening back to our early days as a podcast.
Yes.
History Minutes from Katie.
And our first episode was like, what is currency?
History of the Fed. Before 1913, the U.S. had no permanent central bank. Financial panics were common. The Panic of 1907 nearly collapsed the banking system. Congress responded by creating the Federal Reserve in 1913 under President Woodrow Wilson by signing the Federal Reserve Act.
Let's talk about the Fed's 3 entities. First, Federal Reserve Board of Governors. Second would be the 12 regional reserve banks. We know there is one in St. Louis. Katie's brother works for them. Each reserve bank operates within its own geographic area or district of the United States. So it's kind of like the Hunger Games, they're districts. And the third entity, Federal Open Market Committee, or the FOMC. It's a 12-person group of Federal Reserve System officials that sets crucial U.S. monetary policy at meetings held at least 8 times each year.
Tell us who he is.
So, first of all, in the simplest terms, he is the chairman of the Board of Governors, previously mentioned by Cameron. He is also the chair of the Federal Open Market Committee, the FOMC. He is the public face of U.S. monetary policy.
So we've got all these people that have the faces on the currency, but he is the face of U.S. monetary policy.
Yes.
And so that's the reason why when he speaks, the stock market reacts, because he is the face.
People listen and there are reactions.
So the Fed chair is appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. The chair serves a 4-year term, and they also serve on the Board of Governors under a longer appointment. For instance, our most recent past Fed chair is Jay Powell. After he stepped down as chair, he did not step off the board because he still had time remaining on his term on the board. So he was still on the board. That was considered considered unusual. Apparently, usually when the chair steps down from his chair position, he also leaves the board, but Jay did not do that. So interesting little tidbit there. Now, is the Fed chair the most powerful person in America?
I would say absolutely. But let's tell the listeners who our current Fed chair is.
Our current Fed chair is
Kevin Warsh. If you're still thinking, hey, I thought it was, what do we call him and stuff? Like JJ, Powell. Like,
we had nicknames.
We had nicknames for him. Kevin just took over in May 22nd. So still fairly new. I think a lot of times people know the Fed chair, but they would not be able to name. It's not as commonly spoken, the name, as a president's name would be.
Although I cannot chronologically list off all of the Fed chairs that we've had over the course of the past, say, few decades, I can bet you that if I had a list of them in front of me and I read their names, you would at least recognize their name. You have heard them all talked about at some point. Their names do come up in the news and so forth. It's just not necessarily somebody that you remember or that you remember seeing, really.
There's been some interesting ones for sure. We had a back-to-back of Eugene Meyer in 1875 to 1959. And then prior to that, we had a Eugene Black, 1873 to 1934.
That must be their dates of life, not their dates of service.
Oh, yeah. Never mind. There was overlap. Eugene Meyer was in 30 to 33, and then Eugene Black was 33 to 34. And it's got how many years? Somebody served for almost 6 years. William Harding, Arthur Burns, lots of fun. So before Powell was Janet Yellen.
Do you think it's important that people know the Fed chair's name, like it be in curriculum for children? Or do you think it's just more important that there is a Fed chair?
I think it depends. And what it depends on is the position that the Fed intends to take with its effect on the market. Specifically, Warsh has said that he anticipates taking a far less public position in terms of the things that he says, because the things that the Fed chair says frequently do impact the market, and he prefers that the market react to things that dictate stock price, like fundamental business operations and so forth, and depend less on what the Fed chair or the Fed is saying about the market. So we may see that Warsh takes a far quieter role as Fed chair than what Jay Powell was doing. Definitely has a different philosophy towards how the Fed should interact with the market, basically.
Brilliant. He doesn't want his celebrity to impact anything.
Alan Greenspan.
You recognize that name.
You know that name because he was the 13th chair, but he served from 87 to 06.
Hey, do you guys want to round robin the evolution of the Fed chair?
Let's do it.
I will start first. William McChesney Martin. What a name. 1951 to 1970. He established the Fed's independence, so that's important. He famously said, "The Federal Reserve is in the position of the chaperone who has ordered the punch bowl removed just when the party was really warming up." I like that guy.
Orders to remove the punch bowl that's probably been tainted with a little bit of alcohol. Okay, makes sense.
Next, Katie.
Paul Volcker, 79 to 87. Inflation exceeded 13%, raised interest rates to nearly 20%. Painful recession, ultimately broke inflation. Many economists consider him one of the greatest Fed chairs.
Wow. Okay.
So he must have been the Fed chair when your father built his house, because I've heard your dad say interest rates were unbelievable, and it fits into that time span.
I was going to say 79 to 87. Yeah, because I was born in 88, and I was born into the house that they were in. No.
Next up is Alan Greenspan, 1987 to 2006. So that
he had a lot going on in that time span.
19 years. He oversaw Black Monday, the dot-com boom, the long economic expansion, and elevated the public profile of the Fed chair. So pretty much, like I said, everybody has heard his name, even if they couldn't tell you what he looked like.
Next up is Ben Bernanke, 2006 to 2014. I feel like I should know this guy better. Guided the Federal Reserve through the 2008 financial crisis using unprecedented monetary policy tools, including quantitative easing. I have heard of that.
Okay, Janet Yellen, 2014 to 2018, the first woman to serve as the Fed chair. Whoop, whoop. oversaw continued recovery following the Great Recession and began gradually raising interest rates. I feel bad because I don't remember, but I mean, at that point in my life, I really wasn't engrossed that much with the financial world. And so I did not realize that she was our first woman Fed chair.
I remember her term. Obviously, if you look at the length of time that most of these people served, she served a relatively short time. She only did one 4-year term.
And maybe that's why people don't know the names, because the president is changing much more frequently than a lot of these positions.
Yes. Next on the list is actually Jerome Powell.
JJ.
2018 to 2026, led the Fed through the COVID-19 pandemic, the fastest inflation surge in decades, and one of the most aggressive rate hiking cycles in modern history. Because we went from very, very low, like low, 0% interest rate up to...
It was in that like 5.25 to 5.5 range. And actually, that was a 23-year peak.
It got up there.
Again, I feel like I'm having this conversation with a lot of people recently. Like, oh, well, I have this beautiful mortgage rate at 2%, 3%, and I'm now going to buy a new house and it's at 6.6. When are we going to get back to the 2s and 3s? We don't want to go back to that. Yes, that was great for getting your house. That was great for your note payment, but it was not great for the economy. Let's not go back.
And wrapping up the list is our current Fed chair, Kevin Warsh. And I feel like since we gave pet names to Jerome, he needs one. So K-Dubs, I'm going to call him K-Dubs.
Warshy.
He became the 17th chair of the Federal Reserve on May 22nd, 2026. So he is still brand new. He previously served as a Fed governor from 06 to 11, bringing prior central banking experience back to the role.
So he's been very involved. And again, I think the other reason why people may know Powell's name for sure is that was during COVID-19 when everything was going to online. We were getting a lot of data, a lot of feeds. So people heard, oh, this is happening. Powell's behind it.
Well, I mean, there are two obvious reasons we've all heard of Powell. One is that a lot of the stuff that's gone on in the last 6 to 8 years definitely had Powell's name associated with it. But then also anybody who follows our current president on any sort of social media has heard him talk about.
Okay, so what does the Fed chair actually do? They don't. They do not. We have been in sync several times today. It's really weird. Not even just on this podcast. It's been weird, y'all. They do not set tax policy. They do not pass laws.
Correct.
They do not pass go. They do not approve government spending. They do not control Congress.
Right. They do not, in sum, affect fiscal policy, because that is all done through Congress acting in the ways that Congress can act by setting tax policy, passing laws, approving government spending. That's stuff that Congress does. Yes. What the Fed does, and therefore the Fed chair has an influence on, is the monetary policy.
They influence the economy primarily through monetary policy. Their responsibilities include leading the FOMC, which we talked about, 8 scheduled meetings each year, guiding decisions on interest rates, and helping shape monetary policy.
Right. So it's important to note that this is a committee of people, and they vote on the decisions of the Fed. The things that like the interest rate and monetary policy and so forth, these are things that are voted on by a group of people. So the chair by himself does not make these decisions, cannot by himself decide the direction that the Fed is going to go.
He's the one that's saying, hey, this is the board and I've decided this is what we're doing. So you can't put all the blame on him or her. It's going to be whoever's behind the scenes on this group. Their dual mandate is maximum employment and stable prices or low inflation.
Yeah. So by there, we're talking about not just the Fed chair, but the Fed in general. That's the Fed's dual mandate, is maximizing employment, minimizing inflation. Although not 100% minimizing inflation. I've always found it fascinating that they keep it at that goal of 2%. They want 2% inflation.
It's a balancing act. So they also are in charge of communicating with markets. Sometimes the biggest market moves come not from changing interest rates, but from how the chair describes the economy. And we have definitely seen that when the Fed chair talks, that's where we're going to see everyone's, on pins and needles. What are they going to say? And that is why those conversations are so important. But again, that person is the face of monetary policy and really helps kind of give a guide to many the pulse of the economy.
You know what I love?
Myths.
Debunking myths.
Love it.
So let's do that. Myth number 1.
Just call me Justin.
The Fed chair controls the stock market. No, the Fed influences conditions, but it doesn't control market returns. He's a very influential person, but he's not pushing a button and things happen.
That's not how the market works.
Myth number 2, the Fed chair works for the president. The president appoints the chair, but the Federal Reserve is designed to operate independently in carrying out monetary policy.
There has been a lot of talk recently about the independence of the Fed and the need for the Fed to remain independent. There was concern when Warsh was going through his confirmation whether he was going to be independent or take his marching orders from the person who appointed him. And thus far, he seems to be doing exactly what the Fed chair should do, which is...
We need to have independence from that. You need to have separate buckets working for the overall world.
Okay. Myth number 3, the Fed chair makes decisions alone. Well, I've already hit this one a couple of times, but I'll go ahead and hit it again. Interest rate decisions are voted on by the Federal Open Market Committee, with the chair serving as its leader rather than its sole decision maker. So the Fed chair does not control interest rates. That is important to understand. It's not just one person who makes these decisions, so it's not just one person who can decide, oh, I need to lower rates because the president called me up and told me to lower rates. That's not how it works, but there's a committee.
Okay, let's talk about interest rates. That's what most people know about when it comes to, it's what you feel like you get that big impact from those interest rates. When the Fed raises rates, what happens? Mortgages become more expensive. Auto loans become more expensive. Credit card interest rate increases. Businesses borrow less. Inflation often slows. So Fed raises, you're getting a higher mortgage, your car loans, all of that. When rates fall, borrowing becomes cheaper. Spending often increases. Businesses invest more. Housings can benefit. So that is a kind of a direct correlation you can really look at. Okay, they're raising rates. It's if I'm about to buy a house, I know, oh, crud, my interest rates, I'm going to get higher. But then when they lower rates, maybe opportunity to refinance, maybe great opportunity to buy something that you were looking at because interest rates could have potentially gotten lower.
One of the things that these notes didn't mention that I've always found interesting is the idea behind why does raising an interest rate cause inflation to go down? And the idea being that if you raise interest rates, then people might be inclined to save more and spend less. So that the fact that they're spending less means that inflation isn't increasing as quickly. I don't know if it's true. I feel like I spend the same regardless of what interest rates are. It's not like I'm going, the interest rate's 6%. I'm going to put some money in a CD, buying a new pair of shoes.
The first time in my adulthood where I felt interest rates fall was COVID, when everyone, including myself, refinanced their homes. And that's the first time I really paid attention to it. I was like, hey.
See, and that's usually people do not pay attention to interest rates until they're looking to buy a car, buy a house, borrow. Businesses are always looking at that from an aspect of spending, getting loans, saving, all of. But average Joe usually does not pay attention to a lot of the interest rates until they have a need. Same thing we've talked about, like with your credit score. You don't really need it until you really need it, and you hope that you've been paying attention this whole time.
I guess it's important that we point out that when we say the Fed adjusts interest rates, I know we have discussed this before. It's not like the Fed goes, okay, we're going to tell banks to charge 6% on loans. That's not how that works. The Fed sets one rate or sets a goal of a rate, and the Fed funds rate, and that in turn impacts what lending institutions charge in terms of their interest rate.
It's a big old ripple effect.
Yeah, it's not as though the Fed just goes, okay, banks, you charge this much on interest. And that's not how they, quote unquote, set the rate. I know that people sometimes have a wrong idea about how that works. So it's worth pointing out.
Like with a lot of things in the financial world, if you haven't picked up on it, it's not as like a click as a button as everybody feels like it is. Everything has a connection, has an impact. So it is important to pay attention because, yes, the Fed changing rates may not hit you immediately, but it could hit you down the road in a couple of months.
It's like the domino effect. A lot of times the Fed is kind of that first domino that's tapped. It doesn't make all the decisions. There's not the button, but everybody kind of follows suit in a way.
What else do we want to say about the Fed chair?
The Fed chair. He's a handsome guy.
Good luck, K-Dubs.
So definitely we have a new Fed chair. So it'll be interesting to see. Again, I think it's important to know that, yes, he is in an influential position, but it is not him alone. It's kind of one of those, he's going to be the one that gets blamed. He's going to be the one that gets praised, but it wasn't him alone either way.
Correct.
Fed chair may not be a household name, but few people have more influence over the direction of the U.S. economy. And again, that makes it seem misleading. This person does have a huge impact over the economy, but it's not them alone.
Right.
It is the committee. It is the group behind them. And yes, they were appointed by the president, but this is not somebody who's in the back pocket of the president.
Right.
They are a separate entity, separate completely. So whether you're buying your first home, saving for retirement, financing a business, or simply watching the evening news, the decisions made at the Federal Reserve can eventually find their way into your everyday life. This is definitely something that if you've talked to any of us in the past, anytime, if we know the Federal Reserve Chair is going to be talking, then a lot of times we may say, hey, let's wait and see what they say tomorrow. And then that will determine kind of how we look at things.
Yeah, I have a regularly scheduled conference call that I attend every time the Fed meets. The next day we have a conference call where the analysts talk about what they did.
What did they say?
Yeah.
What are they doing? And I mean, could you think about it? I'm going to throw a little fun pop culture in here because this has been a lot. Could you imagine the craze fandom of Taylor Swift where they're looking at all the Easter eggs and like the way she like put her hair behind her ear or what she wore? That energy was to focus on a Fed chair. It would be like, oh, he chose the powder blue tie. And what does that represent? And where he's saying this, but what actually his suit is saying is this. You know what's going to happen. That is the society we've created now, is like looking for the Easter eggs, the hidden meanings, the theories behind everything.
Instead of Swifties, we'll have Warshies.
Warshies. There we go.
Wash your clothes. Oh, there's the closing bell. Ladies and gentlemen, you've made it to the end of yet another episode of the BullCast podcast. If you liked what you heard and you'd like to hear more, please feel free to go to your favorite subscription service and sign up to have our podcast delivered directly to your device every single Thursday at noon. If you'd like to find out more about Cortland, Katie, Cameron, or Nicole, please feel free to go to our website. That website is bullcastpodcast.com. We've got our bios up there. You can read all about us. We've got pictures, and we've got a place where you can drop a comment or suggest a topic you'd like to hear us talk more about. But hey, I mentioned pictures. We do have pictures on Instagram. That Instagram handle is @BullCastPodcast. We also have an X handle, which is also @BullCastPodcast. And rounding out the social media, we have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is BullCast the Podcast, so you can check us out and interact with us there too. But as I like to do on every single episode, let me remind you all that Katie, Cameron, Nicole, and I all work at a place called Pickler Wealth Advisors. And if you'd like to find out even more about us, if you'd like to find out about what we could potentially do for you, find out about our amazing team, or find out about our boss, David Pickler, please feel free to go to that website. That website is picklerwealthadvisors.com.
That's advisors with an O.
Not an E.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have given you everything you need to go forth and find out about this Kevin Warsh guy. So for now, I'm Court.
I'm Katie.
I'm Cam.
And we're done.